If you're asking yourself what exactly John expected to find inside that truck, the easy guess would be a shitload of cash. But we're not criminals. If we had found a pile of white bags with big cartoon dollar signs on them, we'd have locked up the truck and called the cops. No. The answer is more complicated. John didn't know what he would find inside that truck, which is why he had to open the door. There are two kinds of people in the world. The first see locks and warning signs and say, if they're keeping it locked up so tight, that means it's both dangerous and none of my business. But the second type say, if they want to keep it a secret so bad, then it must be worth seeing. That's John. That is, in fact, the only reason he hadn't moved far away from this fucked up town. If you don't understand what I mean by fucked up, well, I ain't talking about the unemployment rate. This thing with the trucks, it wasn't exactly an isolated incident. 6 centuries ago, the pre-Columbian natives who settled here named this region with a word that in their language translates to the mouth of the shadow. Later, the Iroquois who showed up and inexplicably slaughtered every man, woman, and child in those first tribes renamed it a word that literally translates to, seriously, fuck this place. When French explorer Jacques Marquette explored the area in 1963, he marked it on his map with a crude drawing of what appeared to be a black blob falling out of Satan's butthole. In 1881, a group of coal miners got trapped when an explosion caused the entrance of the mine to collapse. When rescuers showed up to the mouth of the mine, they found sitting in front of the rubble a coal-dusted kid, the youngest of the miners. His exact greeting to the men was, "Don't dig 'em out. They sent me here to tell you that. Them boys blew it themselves. Caved it in on purpose to keep what they found in there from getting out. So just leave it be. Now you there, with that pickaxe? I'd appreciate it if you'd go ahead and use that to cave in my skull, same as they did to that mine. Just maybe it'll gouge out that blue eyeball that's staring back at me from inside my own head." Things have only gone downhill from there. Here, in this town, 3 friends will stroll into a dark alley, and only 2 will emerge from the other end. Those 2 will have no memory of the third. It's rumored that a year ago, a 5-year-old kid went into surgery to have a brain tumor removed. When the surgeon sawed open his skull, the tumor jumped out, a ball of whipping tentacles that launched itself at the surgeon and burrowed into his eye socket. 2 minutes later, he and 2 nurses lay dead in the OR, their craniums neatly cleaned from the inside. I say this incident was rumored because at this point in the story, men in suits showed up, flashed official-looking ID, and took away the bodies. The story in the paper the next day was that everybody died due to an oxygen tank explosion. But John and I know the truth. We know because we were there. We usually are. Tourists show up here because they've heard this town is haunted, but that word does nothing to convey the situation. Infested is better. John and I have made this stuff our hobby, in the way that an especially attractive prisoner makes a hobby out of not getting raped. Jesus, that's a terrible analogy. I apologize. What I'm saying is that it's self-preservation. We didn't choose this. We just have talents that make us the equivalent of that new guy in the cell block who has a slim, hairless body and kind of looks like a woman from behind, and has an incredibly realistic tattoo of boobs on his back. He may have no desire at all to ever touch a penis, but it's going to happen, even if it's just in the process of frantically slapping them away. Jesus, am I still talking about this? John, please delete the above paragraph before it goes off to the publisher. So anyway, that's why John looked inside the truck, and that's why he took the box, even though, for all we knew, the contents were worthless, or toxic, or radioactive, or all 3. We did eventually get into the box, and considering what was inside it, they didn't have nearly enough security around that thing. But that story will have to wait for a bit. Oh, and if you're thinking that it was a huge coincidence that the truck happened to crash in the exact time and place where John and I were birthday tower pissing, don't worry, it wasn't. All of this will make sense with time. Or maybe not. Now, let's fast forward to November 3rd, about 48 hours prior to outbreak. "I'm not crazy," I said crazily to my court-appointed therapist. He seemed bored with our session. That actually made me want to act crazy to impress him. Maybe that was his tactic. I thought, maybe I should tell him I'm the only person on earth who has seen his entire skeleton. Or I could make up something instead. The therapist, whose name I had already forgotten, said, "You believe your role here is to convince me you're not crazy?" Well, I'm not here by choice. You don't think you need the sessions. Look, I understand why the judge ordered it. I mean, it's better than jail. He nodded. I guess that was my cue to keep talking. Man, psychiatry seems like an easy job. I said, a couple of months ago, I shot a pizza delivery guy with a crossbow. I was drunk. Pause. Nothing from the doctor. He was in his 50s, but looked like he could still take me in a game of basketball, even though I was half his age. His gray haircut was like a 1990-era George Clooney. Type of guy whose life had gone exactly as he'd expected it. I bet he'd never shot a delivery guy with a crossbow, even once. I said, okay, I wasn't drunk. I'd only had one beer. I thought the guy was threatening me and my girlfriend Amy. It was a misunderstanding. He said you accused him of being a monster. It was dark. The neighbor heard you shot him, and I'm quoting from the police report. Go back to hell, you unholy abomination, and tell Korok I have a lot more arrows where that came from. Well, that's out of context. So you do believe in monsters? No, of course not. It was a metaphor or something. He had a nameplate on his desk. Dr. Bob Tennant. Next to it was a bobblehead of a St. Louis Cardinals baseball player. I glanced around the room, saw he had a leftover Halloween decoration still taped to his window. A cardboard jack-o'-lantern with a cartoon spider crawling out of its mouth. The doctor had only 5 books on the shelf behind him, which I thought was hilarious because I owned more books than that, and I wasn't even a doctor. Then I realized they were all written by him. They had long titles like The Madness of Crowds, Decoding the Dynamics of Group Paranoia, and A Person is Smart, People are Stupid, An Analysis of Mass Hysteria and Groupthink. Should I be flattered or insulted that I apparently got referred to a world-class expert in the subject of why people believe in stupid shit? He said, you understand, the court didn't order these sessions because you believe in monsters. Right. They want to make sure I won't shoot anyone else with a crossbow. He laughed. That surprised me. I didn't think these guys were allowed to laugh. They want to make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. And while I know it's counterintuitive, the process will actually be easier if you don't think of it as a test you have to pass. But if I'd shot somebody over a girl or a stolen case of beer, I wouldn't be here. I'm here because of the monster thing, because of who I am. Do you want to talk about your beliefs? I shrugged. You know the stories that go around this town. People disappear here. Cops disappear. But I can tell the difference between reality and fantasy. I work. I have a girlfriend. I'm a productive citizen. Well, not productive. I mean, if you add up what I bring to society and what I take out, society probably breaks even. And I'm not crazy. I mean, I know anybody can say that, but a crazy person can't fake sane, right? The whole point of being crazy is that you can't separate crazy ideas from normal ones. So no, I don't believe the world is full of monsters disguised as people, or ghosts, or men made of shadows. I don't believe that the name of the town where the story takes place will remain undisclosed, so as not to add to the local tourism traffic. As a howling orgy of nightmares, I fully recognize that all of those things only a mentally ill person believes. Therefore, I do not believe them. Boom. Therapy accomplished. No answer from Dr. Tennant. Fuck him. I'll sit like this forever. I'm great at not talking to people. After a minute or so, I said, just to be clear, what's said in this room doesn't leave this room, right? Unless I believe a crime is about to be committed, that's correct. Can I show you something on my phone? It's a video clip. I recorded it myself. If it's important to you. I pulled out the phone and dug through the menus until I found a 30-second clip I recorded about a month ago. I held it up for him to see. It was a nighttime scene at an all-night burrito stand near my house. Out front was a faded picnic table, a rusted 55-gallon drum for a trash can, and a whiteboard with prices scrawled in dry erase marker. Without a doubt, the best burritos you can possibly get within 6 blocks of my house at 4 a.m. The grainy shot, my phone's camera wasn't worth a damn in low light, caught the glare of headlights as a black SUV pulled up. Stepping out of it was a young Asian man in a shirt and tie. He casually walked around the tiny orange building, nodding to the kid at the counter. He went to a narrow door in the rear, opened it, and stepped inside. After about 10 seconds, the shot shakily moved towards the door. A hand extended into frame, my hand, and pulled the door open. Inside were some cardboard boxes with labels like large lids and medium paper bags, white, along with a broom and mop and bucket. The Asian man was gone. There was no visible exit. The clip ended. I said, "You saw it, right? Guy goes in, guy doesn't come out. Guy's not in there. He's not in the burrito stand. He's just gone." You believe this is evidence of the supernatural? I've seen this guy since then, around town. This isn't some burrito shop Bermuda Triangle sucking in innocent passerby. The guy walked right towards it on purpose, and he came out somewhere else. And I knew he was coming because he did the same thing every night at the same time. You believe there was a secret passage or something of the sort? Not a physical one. There's no hatch in the floor or anything. We checked. No. It's like a wormhole or something. I don't know, but that's not even the point. It's not just that there was a magical burrito door there or whatever it was. It's that the guy knew what it was and how to use it. There are people like that around town. And you believe those people are dangerous? Oh, Jesus Christ, I am not going to shoot him with a crossbow. How can you not be impressed by this? It's important to you that I believe you. I just realized he was phrasing all of his questions as statements. Wasn't there a character in Alice in Wonderland who did that? Did Alice punch him in the face? Okay, I could have faked the video. You have the option of believing that. And man, if I could have that option, like if I could buy it from you, I'd pay anything. If you told me you'd reach into my brain and turn off my belief in all this stuff, and in exchange, I just had to let you, say, shoot me in the balls with one of those riot control beanbag guns, I'd sign the deal right now. But I can't. That must be very frustrating for you. I snorted. I looked down at the floor between my knees. There was a faded brown stain on the carpet, and I wondered if a patient had once taken a shit in here in the middle of a session. I ran my hands through my hair and felt my fingers tighten and twist it, pain radiating down my scalp. Stop it. He said, "I can see this is upsetting you. We can change the subject if you'd like." I made myself sit up and take a deep breath. No, this is what we're here to talk about, right? He shrugged. I think it's important to you. Yes, in the way that the salt is important to the slug. He said, "It's up to you." I sighed, considered for a few beats, then said, "One time, early in the morning, I was getting ready for work. I go into the bathroom and..." Internal dialogue. Turned on the shower, but the water just stopped in midair. I don't mean the water hovered there frozen in time. That would be crazy. No, the spray was pouring down about 12 inches from the nozzle, then spreading and splattering as if the stream was breaking against something solid, like an invisible hand was held under the shower head to test the temperature. I stood there outside the shower stall naked, squinting in dull confusion. Now, I'm not the smartest guy under normal circumstances, but my 6 a.m. brain has an IQ of about 65. I vaguely thought it was some kind of plumbing problem. I stared stupidly at the interrupted umbrella-shaped spray of water, resisting the impulse to reach out and touch the space the water couldn't seem to pass through. Fear was slowly bubbling up into my brain. Hair stood up on my back. I glanced down, blinking, as if I would find a note explaining all this taped to my pubic hair. I didn't. Then I heard the spray change, the splattering on the tiles taking on a different tone. I glanced up and saw the part of the flow farthest from me slowly return to normal, the water shooting past the invisible obstruction in a gentle arc. The unseen thing was passing out of the stream. It wasn't until the spray looked completely normal again that I realized this meant the invisible thing that had been blocking the water was now moving toward me. I jumped back, moving so quick that I thought the half-open shower curtain had blown back from the wind of my rapid movement. But that wasn't right, because the curtain didn't return to its normal shape right away. It stayed bulged outward, something unseen pushing against it. I backed up against the wall, feeling the towel bar pressing into my back. The shower curtain fell straight again, and now there was nothing in the bathroom but the radiostatic sound of the shower splattering against the tile. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding so hard I was getting dizzy. I slowly put a hand out, tentative, toward the curtain, through the space the unseen thing had passed. Nothing. I decided to forget about the shower. I cranked off the water, turned toward the door, and I saw something. Or I almost did. Just out of the corner of my eye. A dark shape. A black figure whipping through the doorway just out of sight. Like a shadow, without the person. I couldn't have seen it for more than 1/10 of a second, but I did see it, now imprinted in my brain from that flash of a glance. The form, black, in the shape of a man, but then becoming formless, like a single drop of dark food coloring before it dissolves in a sink of running water. I had seen it before. End internalized thought. I thought I saw something in there. I don't know. Probably nothing. I slumped in the chair and crossed my arms. This is a source of anxiety for you, having these beliefs and feeling like you can't talk about them without being dismissed. I stared out the window, and my Bronco rusting in the parking lot, the metal eager to get back to just being dirt. Life was probably easier for it back then. I said, "Who's paying for these sessions again?" "Payment is your responsibility. But we have a sliding scale." Awesome. He considered for a moment and then said, "Would it put you more at ease if I told you that I believe in monsters?" It might put me at ease, but I can't speak for the people who hand out psychiatrist licenses. I'll tell you a story. Now, I understand that with your hobbies, people contact you, correct? Believing they have ghosts or demons in their homes? Sometimes. And I'm going to make an assumption if you arrive and tell them that the source of their anxiety is not, in fact, supernatural. They're anything but relieved, correct? Meaning they want the banging in their attic to be a ghost and not a squirrel trapped in the chimney. Yeah, I guess. So you see, fear is just another manifestation of insecurity. What humans want most of all is to be right, even if we're being right about our own doom. If we believe there are monsters around the next corner ready to tear us apart, we would literally prefer to be right about the monsters than to be shown to be wrong in the eyes of others and made to look foolish. I didn't answer. I glanced around for a clock. He didn't have one. The bastard. So a few years ago, while I was presenting at a conference in Europe, my wife called and insisted that the walls of our laundry room were throbbing. That's the word she used, pulsing, like the wall itself was alive. She described a hum, an energy that she could feel as soon as she walked into the room. I suggested it was a wiring problem. She became, let's just say, agitated at that point. 3 days later, just before I was due to come back, she called again. The problem was getting worse, she said. There was an audible hum now from the wall. She couldn't sleep. She could hear it as soon as she walked into the house. She could feel it, the vibration, like something unnatural was ready to burst forth into our world. So, I flew home the next day and found her extremely upset. I understood immediately why my suggestion of a wiring problem was so insulting. This was the sound of something alive, something massive. So, even though I was exhausted, jet-lagged, and just completely dead on my feet, I had no other thought than to go out to the garage, get my tools, and peel off the siding. Guess what I found? I didn't answer. Guess. Not sure I want to know. Bees. They had an entire hive in the wall, sprawling from floor to ceiling, tens of thousands of them. His face was lighting up with the telling of his amusing anecdote. Why not? He was getting paid to tell it. So I went and put on a hat and gloves and wrapped my wife's scarf around my face and sprayed the hive. I killed them by the thousands. Only later did I realize that the bees are quite valuable, and a local beekeeper actually came and carefully removed the hive itself at no charge. I think he'd have actually paid me if I hadn't killed so many of them at the start. Do you understand? Yeah, your wife thought it was a monster. Turned out to be just bees. So my little problem? Probably just bees. It's all bees. Nothing to worry about. I'm afraid you misunderstood. That was the day that a very powerful, very dangerous monster turned out to be real. Just ask the bees. 36 hours prior to outbreak. I said, "Can you see me?" The freckled redhead on my laptop screen said, "Yep." Amy Sullivan had her hair in red pigtails, which I like, and was wearing a huge, ironic t-shirt with a badly drawn eagle and American flag on it, which I hate. It was like a tent on her. She asked, "How'd your therapy go?" Jesus, Amy, you don't start a conversation with your boyfriend asking him how his court-ordered therapy went. You have to ease into that. Sorry. It's a sensitive subject. Okay, forget it. I said, "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" "Yep. You miss me, don't you?" "You know I can't function on my own." After a beat and another sip of tea, she said, "Are you going to be all right? Not just with the therapy, but that whole situation?" "Your roommate isn't around, right?" "No." "Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Everything is quiet." She said, "That scared me that night." I know it did. Nothing had happened like that for a long time. I know. If something like that happens again, I'll shoot it with a crossbow again. I told you that. Did you talk to your therapist about that? Subtle, Amy. Well, I'm curious. How did I find a girl who's worse at conversation than I am? She took a sip from a teacup she pulled from off camera. She had to balance the cup with her left wrist. That is, the stump where her left hand should be. She was in a car accident when she was a teenager, before I knew her. The crash took her hand and her parents and left her with chronic back pain and an implanted titanium rod in her spine. She refused to get a prosthetic hand because she thought they were creepy. But in my mind, between the titanium spine and a robot hand, she'd be like 10% of the way to a cyborg, an idea that I found more than mildly arousing. Amy and I had met in high school in a special ed classroom for kids with behavior disorders. Neither of us really belonged there. She was there because she had a bad reaction to pain medication and bit a teacher. I was there due to a misunderstanding. A bully kept fucking with me until I snapped and gouged out his eyes. You know how kids are. Our fairy tale romance began by us completely ignoring each other for 5 years, during which I only knew her by a crude nickname some asshole had given her. Then, one day, John and I were asked as a favor to look into her disappearance. It wasn't a big deal. It only took us a couple of days to get to the bottom of it. She had been kidnapped by monsters. Setting aside her tea, she said, "So what's he like, a psychiatrist?" "It's just like you've seen in the movies, Amy. They get you talking and wait for you to announce you've had an epiphany." I thought for a moment and said, "And the therapist was a she, not a he. She's about 22, busty. She kept turning everything into some kind of sexual innuendo. Like she said she believed therapy should be hands-on, and grabbed my crotch. Then we porked on the desk for a while and the time was up." I shrugged. "Like I said, it's just like in that movie, Anal Therapist 6. She sighed and sipped her tea. "So, I guess you don't miss me after all." Wait, were we not supposed to be having sex with other people, Amy? I guess that was never made clear to me. Sorry. She didn't answer or laugh, and I said, "Come on. You know, if one of us wanted to sleep around, you'd have a way easier time than I would. I'm the crazy guy who sees monsters and shoots delivery people. You're the adorable redhead. You could go down to the guy's floor of the dorm and say, I'm a woman, I want to have sex. And you'd have 20 guys lined up with roses and shit. I'd have to work at it. Why do guys always say that? It's just as hard for the girl. That's ridiculous. Every bar is full of guys desperate to get laid and girls desperate to fend off all the horny guys. It's just the way it is. It's biology. It's easier for girls. That's actually impossible. Heterosexual sex takes one man and one woman. That means guys and girls have the exact same amount of sex. That means there are an equal number of sluts and desperate people on both sides. That can't be right. She shrugged. Do the math. And yes, just to settle the issue, I do miss you. I know. There's nobody here to ruin movies for me. Amy had a superhuman ability to pick out that one flaw in a movie that would make it impossible to ever fully enjoy it again. During a single weekend's George Lucas marathon, she pointed out to me that if Indiana Jones had just stayed home, Raiders of the Lost Ark would have turned out exactly the same way. The Nazis would have opened the Ark and gotten vaporized. Then, during The Empire Strikes Back, she paused the movie when a character referred to Luke's ship as an X-Wing, which is impossible, she said, because there's no way that ship would be called an X-Wing, based on it being physically shaped like the English letter X, since an ancient race of people in a distant galaxy would never have seen the letter before. Jesus. I'm making her sound like a bitch. To the webcam window, I said, how are the classes going? Have you gotten to the part where they teach you to make computer viruses? Because I have people I want to send them to. If by virus you mean a program that accidentally freezes up your whole operating system when you try to execute it, then I think everything I've coded so far counts as one. Oh, did you know you could hack the phone system with a Cap'n Crunch whistle? Is that like hacker slang or... No, the phones back in the 70s did everything by tones. The different frequencies and stuff told the system how to route the calls and all that. So there was a hacker named John Draper who figured out the little plastic toy whistles they were putting in boxes of Cap'n Crunch had the same exact frequency and tone that the phone system was using to end charges on a call. He got free long distance for like 2 years just by blowing his toy whistle into the phone every time. Holy shit, I'm gonna try that. See, this is the type of stuff colleges should be teaching. Well, they've updated the phone system since then. Oh. We sat in silence for a moment, then she said, give me a second. I'm trying to think of a way to work the conversation back around to your therapy again. I said, I love you. She said, I know. Actually, tomorrow's a group session. I'll probably have to wax beforehand. Gross. Sorry. Though maybe I shouldn't talk since I'm sitting here on a webcam without any pants on. I said, oh, really? Want to see? Yeah. Yes, I do. 30 hours prior to outbreak. There exists in this world a spider the size of a dinner plate, a foot wide if you include the legs. It's called the Goliath bird-eating spider, or the Goliath fucking bird-eating spider, by those who have actually seen one. It doesn't eat only birds. It mostly eats rats and insects, but they still call it the bird-eating spider because the fact that it can eat a bird is the most important thing you need to know about it. If you run across one of these things, like in your closet or crawling out of your bowl of soup, the first thing somebody will say is, watch it, man. That thing can eat a goddamn bird. I don't know how they catch the birds. I know the Goliath fucking bird-eating spider can't fly because if it could, it would have a different name entirely. We would call it Sir, because it would be the dominant species on the planet. None of us would leave the house unless a Goliath fucking flying bird-eating spider said it was okay. I've seen one of those things in person at a zoo when I was in high school. I was 15, my face breaking out in acne and getting fatter by the day, staring open-mouthed at this monster pawing at the glass wall of its cage, big as both of my hands. The guys around me were giggling and punching each other in the arm, and some girl was squealing behind me. But I didn't make a sound. I couldn't. There was nothing but a pane of glass between me and that thing. For months after, I'd watch the dark corners of my bedroom at night for hairy legs as thick as a finger poking out from behind a stack of comic books and video game magazines. I imagined, no, expected, to find strands of spiderweb as thick as fishing line in my closet, bulging with clumps of half-eaten sparrows. Or spider droppings in my shoes, the little turds laced with bits of feather. Or pink piles of eggs, yoked with baby spiders already the size of golf balls. And even now, 10 years later, and at the age of 25, I still glance between the sheets at night before pushing my legs in, some part of my subconscious still looking for the huge spider crouching in the shadows. I bring this up because the Goliath was the first thing that popped into my mind when I woke up with something in my bed, biting my leg. I felt a pinch on my ankle, like digging needles. The Goliath fucking bird-eating spider leapt out of the fog of my sleepy imagination as I flung the blankets aside. It was dark. Lights were off, clock off, everything off. I sat up and squinted down at my leg, movement down by the sheets. I swung my leg off the bed and I could feel the weight of something clinging to my ankle, heavy as a can of beer. A spasm of panic ripped through me. I kicked out with the leg, grunting in the chill of the air of my dark bedroom, trying to shake off the little biting whatever it was. The thing went flying across the room, passing through a shaft of moonlight spilling in around my blinds. In that brief second, I saw a flash of jointed legs, lots of legs, and a tail, armored plates like a lobster. The whole thing was as long as a shoe, black. What in the name of... The creature that my panicked mind was calling a spider, even though it clearly wasn't an arachnid or any other species native to planet Earth, flew across the bedroom and hit the wall, landing behind a basket of laundry. I bolted up out of the bed, squinting, edging around the room, feeling the wall with my hands. I blinked, trying to get my night vision, scanning for something to use as a weapon. I pawed around the jumble of objects on my nightstand, saw something jutting out from under a copy of Entertainment Weekly. Round and slim, I thought it was maybe the hilt of a knife. I grabbed it and threw it, realizing only after it was airborne that it was my asthma inhaler. I reached again, grabbed for what looked like the heaviest object on the table, a jar of cheese sauce. I spotted movement across the baseboard. I chucked the jar, grunting with the effort. A thud, a tinkle of broken glass. Silence. I grabbed the table lamp, a novelty item that consisted of a naked bulb jutting out of a stained glass sculpture of a turkey. A birthday present from John. I yanked the cord from the wall and raised the turkey by the neck, holding it over my shoulder like a quarterback photographed in mid-throw. The spider skittered across the floor, out the doorway and into the living room. It had legs all over it, walking on half a dozen legs with another half dozen sticking up in the air like dreadlocks, like the thing was made to keep running even on its back. The sight of the thing froze me. That awful, primal, paralyzing terror that only accompanies an encounter with something completely alien. I lowered the lamp and forced myself to take a step forward. I tried to control my breathing. I risked a glance down at my leg and saw a crimson stripe leaking down from the bite. That little bastard. I felt a heat and then a numbness creeping its way up my leg. I didn't know if the little monster was poisonous or if it was just the shock of getting bitten. I took 3 steps toward the doorway and had developed a serious limp by the 4th. I slowly peered into the living room. Not quite as dark in here, the street lamps outside spilling half-hearted ribbons of light on the floor, writhing among shadows of wind-blown tree branches. No sign of the spider. I heard a scratchy rustle from the kitchen tiles to my left and spun on it. It was my dog. Molly stepped sleepily towards me, a knee-high reddish shape topped by 2 eyes reflecting bluish moonlight. I caught the faint blur of a wagging tail behind her. She was looking right at me, wondering why I was up, wondering why I smelled like terror sweat, wondering if I had any snacks on me. I glanced toward the front door. 10 feet of carpet between me and it. I had half made up my mind to pack Molly into the car and flee to John's place, then regroup so the 2 of us could come back here tomorrow with a shotgun and holy water. My feet had never been so bare, those little naked toes. That spider thing probably looks at those like the ears on a chocolate bunny. Where had I left my shoes? I brandished the turkey lamp and took a shaky step, my bitten left leg having fallen asleep. I willed to hold it up from here to the driveway. A scream from behind me. I flinched and spun, then realized it was my phone. John had set my phone's text message ringtone to a sound clip of him screaming, "Text shit!" I never figured out how to change it back. I snatched the phone from the coffee table and saw it was a blank message with an attached photo. I opened the image. A man's penis. I quickly closed it. What the hell? The phone sounded again in my hand. A call this time. I answered. "Dave, don't talk. Listen. You have a picture in your inbox. Do not open it." I sent it to the wrong number. "Jesus Christ, John, listen to me. Man, you sound out of breath. John, The phone slipped from my fingers, which were suddenly unable to grip it. I took a step toward the fallen phone, then another, and the room started wobbling in front of my eyes, losing balance. No, you cannot fall. You cannot go down there with that thing." I fell face first on the carpet. My leg was 50 pounds of dead weight dragging behind me. My right leg was tingling now, terror pumping the poison through my veins with horrible efficiency. I swung an arm around, finding the coffee table. I clawed at it, tried to raise myself. No grip with that hand. Flat on the floor again. I didn't even feel the impact on the shoulder I landed on. "Help! Somebody!" I squealed. I wished I knew the names of my neighbors. "Help!" The last cry ended in a croak. The cell phone screamed again. Mustering every last calorie of energy from my right arm, I reached out for a phone that seemed to be 10 miles away. I got my dead fingers on top of it, then dragged it across the carpet towards my face. It was heavy as a bag of concrete. Manipulating the hand was like trying to fish a stuffed animal out of one of those claw games at the carnival. I saw that the incoming message was from John. "John!" I screamed to the phone stupidly. I slapped at the buttons with my clumsy carnival claw hand. I fought to lift my head from the floor. The screen changed. An image appeared. Penis. My arm went dead. My head bounced off the floor, spinal cord totally unplugged now. I was staring across an expanse of carpet, seeing tumbleweeds of dog hair that had gathered under the TV cabinet across the room. Couldn't look away. Didn't even have that much muscle control. Couldn't close my eyes. I could hear, though, and I detected the ever-so-faint rustling of carpet, many little feet stepping through the fibers, hard, black, jointed legs shuffled into view. The spider completely filled my field of vision, no more than 6 inches from my eyes. Legs everywhere. A half dozen of them were coated in nacho cheese sauce. The creature's mouth was as big as mine, surrounded by needle-thin mandibles. 2 lips parted, and I saw with revulsion that it had a pink tongue, exactly like a human's. It inched towards my face. The spider was my world, its many glistening black legs extending past both ends of the horizon. I could count the taste buds on its lolling pink tongue, could see the wet ridges of the roof of its mouth. Its carapace glistened with some kind of slime. 2 of its legs were touching my mouth. It tickled. A huge furry nose descended into my field of vision, like the fuzzy snout of God himself. Molly had finally grown curious enough about the situation to wander in from the kitchen. Her nose twitched as she detected the smell of nacho cheese. She licked the spider, discovered that her most ambitious doggy dream had finally come true. Naturally cheese-coated prey. With a snap of her jaws and a quick twist of her head, she ripped off 4 of the monster's legs and buckled down to the hard work of chewing them. The spider shrieked with a piercing noise that made my bones vibrate. It sped from view so fast I had no idea what direction it went. 29 hours prior to outbreak. Paralyzed. Was this permanent? I pictured the venom turning my spinal column into mush. Molly glanced at me, quickly judging me for my laziness. She worked over her severed spider legs, realizing there wasn't much meat inside the crunchy outer shell. She settled in and pinned the legs under her front paws, then started carefully licking the cheese off of them. I lay there for an interminable amount of time that in reality was about 1 hour. I eventually felt a tingling across my torso as I sleepily imagined I had landed on an anthill. It was, however, the feeling returning to my body. 20 minutes or so later, I found I could twitch my fingers. A half hour after that, I was sitting upright on the sofa, cradling my throbbing head in my hands. I devoted all my mental energy to blocking out any thoughts of what the spider intended to do with my immobilized body. Well, the first step would be to lay eggs. Oh, wait, the spider. It could still be here. Shit. 3 seconds later, I was on the porch, peering back through the front door into my own living room. No sign of the spider, but then again, it was pitch dark inside, and I had a streetlight behind me, so all I could see in the little window was a reflection of my own stupid face. My hair looked like I had combed it with an angry cat. I reached for my cell phone, then realized it was on the floor in the living room. I flung open the door, sprinted in, rolled, grabbed the phone, and sprinted back out, slamming the door behind me. I dialed John. Voicemail. This is John. If you're calling because you found the rest of my guitar, just bring it by the apartment. Sorry about the rug. Leave a message. I didn't. Even on a Thursday night, the man was probably marinated and comatose by now. I glanced around the neighborhood, my nervous breast barely visible in the November air. Why was mine the only house that didn't have power? I raised the phone, but didn't dial. The English language needs a word for that feeling you get when you badly need help, but there's no one you can call because you're not popular enough to have friends, not rich enough to have employees, and not powerful enough to have lackeys. It's a very distinct cocktail of impotence, loneliness, and a sudden stark assessment of your non-worth to society. Internment? There was a broom leaning by the front door from when I had used it to knock a dead bird off the porch a few days ago. I clutched it in front of me like a spear and pushed through the door. Molly brushed past me in the opposite direction, presumably to find the perfect spot outside my car door to take a dump so that I'd be sure to step in it next time I was in a hurry to get to work. I took one step aside, focusing on the floor, too. The spider thumped onto my head, twitchy legs tangling in my hair. I dropped the broom and threw my hands up as the monster climbed over my ear and onto my shoulder. Itchy little legs all over my face and neck. I grabbed the spider around the body, rigid legs bending under my hands. I tried to pull it off. I couldn't. The feet were latched on somehow. My shirt and my skin stretched away from my shoulder as I pulled. I heard it screeching like steam from a teapot and realized it was me. Sharp mandibles filled the view in my right eye. A stab of pain seared through my skull. I lost vision in that eye and thought the bastard had plucked out my eyeball. I let out a scream of rage and grabbed bundles of legs with both hands, ripping them away from the skin. I felt wetness and realized the monster had left one leg behind, the foot still attached to my shoulder. But I was free of the creature now, the unholy thing thrashing about in my hands, twisting its mouth toward me, trying to bite. That freaking tongue, god damn it. I frantically looked around with my one good eye, trying to find a container I could cram the creature into. Laundry basket, bedroom floor. Into the bedroom, I kicked over the plastic bucket, dumping the clothes. I dunked the beast inside and turned the basket over, imprisoning it. I knocked the shit off my nightstand and laid it sideways on top of the basket. Good and heavy. There were vertical slots in the basket and the spider stuck a leg through. It couldn't crawl out, but I suspected it could bite through the plastic eventually. Have to watch it. I sat heavily on the bed, chest heaving, face wet and sticky, cringing. I lifted a tentative hand to the right side of my face, expecting to find a squishy eyeball laying on my cheek. I didn't. I winced as I felt around the eyelid, raw skin stinging at my touch. Everything felt torn and ragged up there. I blinked and tried looking through the eye. Found I could a little bit. I looked down, intending to dig my cell phone from my pocket, and let out a disgusted hiss. The spider's black leg, the one that broke off when I was pulling it off me, was still stuck to my shirt. I grabbed it and pulled it, and it would not come free. It wasn't stuck to the shirt, it was stuck to me, pulling up the skin like a circus tent. The foot was hooked in somehow, dug in like a tick. I pulled apart the hole in the shirt and pinched the skin between two fingers and tried to get a close look at it. I couldn't tell the exact point where the severed leg ended and the patch of skin on my shoulder began. It was like the leg had fused to it somehow. I pulled and twisted. It was like trying to pull off one of my own fingers. I was getting seriously pissed at this point. I stomped out of the bedroom and into the kitchen. I yanked over several drawers until I found a utility knife, what some people call a box cutter. Molly came trotting in behind me, figuring maybe I was making a snack and she could get some scraps. I pulled off my shirt, then grabbed a long wooden spoon and stuck it sideways in my mouth. I stabbed the tip of the utility knife's short blade in the point where the monster's foot was fused with my skin and started prying. I growled and cursed around the spoon, teeth denting into the wood. A thick drop of blood ran down my chest like candle wax. It took 20 minutes. In the end, I had the 6-inch long jointed leg in my hand with a little dot of bloody skin and fat on the end that used to be a part of me. I held a bundle of wet paper towels to the wound, smears of blood making my abdomen look like a finger painting. I found the monster's leg in a plastic container from my basket. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, taking slow breaths. I had taken one step back toward the bedroom when a knock came at the door. I froze, decided not to answer it, then realized it may be John. I went into the bedroom to check on the caged beast. It had 2 legs through a slot in the plastic basket but had made no progress towards biting its way out. I made my way back across the living room, smacking my foot on the coffee table on the way. I yanked open the door. It was a cop. A young guy. I knew him. Name was Frankie something. Went to high school with me. I straightened up and said, "What can I do for you, officer?" I saw his eyes go right to my torso, where I was holding a red wad of paper towels over a freely bleeding wound, and then back to my face, where one eye was swollen shut under a ragged eyelid caked with dried blood. He had a hand resting on the butt of his gun, alert in the way that cops are. He began with, "Who else is in this house, sir?" "It's fine. Nobody. I live here alone. My girlfriend lives here with me, but she's away at school right now, so it's just me. Everything's fine. I just had a problem with something that came into the house. Some kind of animal." "You mind if I come in, sir?" There was no right answer to that, since he clearly thought I had a butchered prostitute near somewhere. I stepped aside without a word. That "sir" shit was irritating me. He was my age. I went to parties with this guy in school, watched him play teabag twister with underwear on his head. Burgess, I thought. That's his name. Frankie Burgess. He walked past me and I said, "I turned on a light, but the power's out. Must have, blown a fuse or something." He gave me a look that suggested what I just said gave him a whole new perspective on my mental state. I could read his face perfectly because the living room light was on. "Oh, right." I stumbled. Guess it's back on now." I blinked. Had it been on this whole time? The place was a mess. It had been a mess before. The blood I dripped on the carpet actually blended with the nearby coffee stain. But where we were standing gave us a clear view into the kitchen, where drawers were flung open, a roll of paper towels had fallen onto the floor, and a pile of plastic lids had spilled out of a cabinet. A couple of steps after that, and he would have a view of the main bedroom, where it looked like a bomb had gone off. Oh, and there was an alien spider monster trapped under an overturned laundry basket with a piece of furniture piled on top of it. The cop moved into the kitchen and I followed him. I heard a skittering noise from the bedroom and saw the spider trying desperately to escape between the plastic bars of his laundry basket prison. The cop gave no notice. He looked at the bloody box cutter on the counter, then glanced back at me and my several bloody wounds. I stepped casually backward, stopping in front of the bedroom door, leaning against the door frame, as if it wasn't somehow trying to block a view of the room with my body. "Yeah, that," I said, nodding toward the little knife. "I cut myself a few times. No big deal. I was trying to get this thing off of me. I think it was a possum or something. I couldn't get a look at it. It was clawing me up pretty bad." He was looking past me into the bedroom and said, "Can you step aside, sir?" "Screw it. Let this thing bite his eyes out. What do I care?" "Go right in, Frankie." I stepped aside and Frankie the cop entered the bedroom. He surveyed the carnage, then finally looked down on the overturned basket. 5 little armored legs writhed around between the plastic slats. The cop casually looked away, glancing into my closet with disinterest. Finally, he looked back at me. "So, did you kill it or what?" The beast was right there in the basket, in full view, jaws clicking against the plastic, a sound like a dog gnawing on a bone. It had gotten a few legs entirely through the basket and was now pulling its body through. All of this went entirely unnoticed by Officer Burgess. "He doesn't see it." No. I tried to trap it." The thing had its head out of the basket now. Frankie looked down. Nothing to see. He looked back at me. "You had anything to drink tonight, sir?" "Couple of beers. Earlier." "Have you taken anything else?" "No." "Can you tell me what day it is?" The spider had a third of its body out of the basket. There was a thick piece of armor around its abdomen that was wedged in between the plastic strips. It had 4 legs working on the problem. "Thursday night, I guess it's Friday morning now? November 4th, I think. My name is David Wong. I'm currently standing in my home. I'm not high." "The neighbors were worried about you. They heard a lot of noise in here." You try waking up with some animal biting you in your sleep. This isn't the first time we've been out here, is it? I sighed. No. You put some weight on top of that basket there. I told you I was trying to trap it. No, the basket was you trying to trap it. I'm thinking the weight is on there because you thought you had trapped it. What? No, it was dark. The monster pulled the whitest piece of shell through the bars. Halfway out, the difficult half. Is it possible you made all those cuts yourself with that knife there? What? No, I don't think so. Why do you keep looking down there? I took a step back out of the room. No reason. Do you see something down there, Mr. Wong? I turned my eyes up to the cop. I was sweating again. No. Have we been seeing things tonight? I didn't answer. 'Cause this wouldn't be the first time, would it? No. I'm fine. I focused on not looking down at the basket. The chewing sounds had stopped. I couldn't hold out anymore. I looked down. It was gone. I felt my bowels loosen. I glanced around the room, checked the ceiling. Nowhere. The cop turned and left the room. Why don't you come with me, Mr. Wong, and I'll take you to the emergency room. What? No, I'm fine. The cuts are no big deal. Don't look minor to me. No, it's fine. Put it in your report that I refused treatment. I'm fine. You got any family that live here in town? No. Nobody? Parents, aunts, uncles? Long story. There a friend we can call? John, I guess. I was glancing everywhere trying to spot the spider. No idea what I'd do if I did. Well, tell you what. Give him a call, and I'll hang out here until he shows up. Keep you company. In case the animal comes back. I couldn't think of anything that would make this guy leave, short of punching him and forcing him to haul me to jail. That hardly seemed like the solution, though. The cop can stay as long as he wants, I thought, as long as he doesn't go to the tool shed. Frankie the cop turned to me at that moment and said, I'm going to have a look around outside. I let the cop go out the back door, but didn't offer to follow him. I guess he wanted to do a walk around to the yard to make sure there wasn't a corpse out there. Let him. As soon as he was out of sight, I moved back through the kitchen, into the living room, and then through to the bedroom. I flipped on the light, checked the ceiling, checked everywhere. No spider. I heard the muffled sound of steps on crackling leaves and saw the cop outside, passing the window with a flashlight. I headed for the bedroom, soaked a washcloth, and cleaned the dried blood off me. I got a Band-Aid on my shoulder and cleaned up the eyelid, flinching with every singing touch. I went into the bedroom, searching for the monster, even looking in the laundry basket in case the thing had decided to return for some reason. I put on a shirt and tried to push down my hair, thinking I could present a picture of stable citizen for the cop and make him feel better about leaving, before he asked to see the tool shed. I grabbed my phone from the bed and dialed John one last time. 3 rings and then... Hello? John? It's me. What? Who? We got a situation. Can it wait until after work tomorrow? No, there's something in my house. I glanced around for the cop. A creature. It took a chunk out of my leg and then it went for my eye. Really? You kill it? No, it's hiding somewhere. It's small. How small? Size of a squirrel, built like an insect. A lot of legs, maybe 12. It had a mouth like... I turned and saw the cop standing in the bedroom doorway. I nodded sideways towards the phone and said, This is John. He's on his way. Good. He nodded toward the back door. Do you have a key to that tool shed outside? I pocketed the phone without saying goodbye to John. Oh no, I've lost the key. I haven't been out there in months. I got a pair of bolt cutters out in my trunk. Tell you what, let me open that up for you. No, that won't be necessary. I insist. You don't want to be stuck without your lawn implements. You can finally rake all the leaves out there. We stared each other down. Man, this just keeps getting better and better. I found myself wishing the spider would jump down and eat this guy. Actually, I think I have a key. Good. Get it. I went into the kitchen and plucked the tool shed key off the nail next to the back door, where it had been in plain view the entire time. Frankie the cop let me lead the way outside to the shed, staying a few steps back so that he could have time to shoot me in case I decided to wheel on him with fists of fury. I held out the key and took a deep breath. I slipped it into the padlock and snapped it open. I pulled the tool shed door slightly ajar and turned to Frankie. What's in there? I collect things. It's a hobby. That's all. And as far as I know, there's nothing illegal here. Though you could say some of it is imported. Could you go ahead and step back, sir? He opened the little shed and stabbed the darkness with a flashlight beam. I held my breath. He went right to the door with a light, where a body would be, I guess. There wasn't one there, not right now, and instead he illuminated the crust of grass on the wheel of my lawnmower. Then he flicked the flashlight beam to the set of metal shelves along the back and side walls. The beam hit a glass jar the size of a can of paint and illuminated the murky liquid inside. Officer Frankie Burgess stared at it, waiting for his eyes to register what he was seeing. Eventually he would figure out it was a late-term fetus, a head the size of a fist, its eyes closed. It had no arms or legs. Its torso had been replaced by a jointed mechanical apparatus that hooked around to a point like the tail of a seahorse. I manufactured a chuckle and said, I got that off eBay. It's a prop from a movie. The cop glanced at me. I glanced away. He shined his light back onto the shelf. Next to the jar was an ant farm. The tunnels between the panes of glass had been dug neatly to spell out the word, help. Next to that was my old Xbox, the cables wrapped around it. He moved the light down a foot to the shelf below. He passed over a stack of old magazines, not noticing that the top one was an old, faded issue of Time depicting a swarm of Secret Service agents around a dead Bill Clinton. The words, "Who did it?" blasting across the picture in red. Next to the magazines was a stuffed red Tickle Me Elmo doll, the fur faded with dust. At the moment the light hit it, its sound box crackled to life in a cartoony voice that said, 5 3/4 inches erect. I said, it's, broken. Frankie the cop inched the beam to the next object, a mason jar containing a twisted purple tongue suspended in clear liquid. Next to it was a duplicate jar, only with 2 human eyes floating side by side, trailing a tangled tail of nerves and blood vessels. The cops didn't notice that when the beam swept past the jar, the eyes turned to follow it. Next to the jars was an old battery from my truck, matted with smears of black grime. The light made it to the bottom, where it found a red plastic gasoline can sitting on the floor next to an old CRT computer monitor with a screen that had been shattered by a gunshot. Next to it was the only thing I didn't want the cop to see. The box. We heard crunching leaves behind us. Yo, what's up? The cop and I turned to see a dark figure with one hand swinging the orange coal of a burning cigarette. John. Hi, Frankie. Dave, sorry I sent you all those pictures of my dick. I hope that's not what caused you to injure your eye. The cop put the flashlight on John, maybe to make sure he wasn't armed. John wore a flannel shirt and a black baseball cap with the word hat on it in all caps. Frankie the cop thanked John for coming over. I was hoping he would back out of the tool shed because each minute he stood there made me more and more nervous. My eye and shoulder were throbbing. The wind shifted and I picked up the scent of alcohol from John. The cop swung the flashlight beam around and spotlighted the floor of the tool shed again. Light fell on the box, and I mean the box. The olive green box we'd found in the back of that unmarked black truck. It looked like a serious box. It looked like something you'd want to look inside of, if your job was to keep people safe. Frankie nodded toward it. What's in the green box there? Dunno. That was sort of true, I guess. John said, we found it. You can't get it open. That was also true. Frankie couldn't get it open. I said, you can take it back with you if you want. Put it in the lost and found at the police station. The cop clicked off the flashlight, then asked John if they could go inside and talk. He then gestured toward the tool shed with the flashlight and said to me, you want to close that up while I have a word here with John? I said that seemed like a fine idea, and their shoes crunched through the leaves until they reached the light of my back door. I closed the tool shed and clicked the padlock shut, then let out a sigh of relief. The relief lasted approximately 4 seconds, the time it took me to realize John and Frankie the cop were now back inside the house with the murderous alien spider. I hurried back inside and saw John and the cop in my living room having a low conversation out of my hearing. The cop, I guess, was asking John to babysit me and to call if I showed more signs of craziness. I moved closer and barely heard John say, "Been real depressed lately," and wondered what kind of portrait he was painting in there. I scanned the kitchen for the spider, being sure to check the high ground. No sign of it. I closed some of the open drawers and cabinets, tried to straighten the place up. I made it all the way out of the room before I turned and realized the cabinets would be an ideal hiding place for the little bastard. I'd be getting out my cereal tomorrow morning, and the fucker would launch itself at me. Could I search through them without drawing Frankie's attention? Better wait. Instead, I checked the bedroom, again under the guise of straightening up. I looked under my baskets and then under the bed. I pushed around the clothes in my closet. I checked behind the door. No spider.